Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Wynn's Kitchen podcast. I'm your host, Wynn Austin, and today, in honor of AAPI month, my guest is Judy Tsuei. She's the founder of Wild Hearted Words, a marketing agency, and she's also a fellow mamapreneur in San Diego, an author, and a host of her own podcast, F Saving Face. Welcome, Judy. Thank you for
Hi.
joining our show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited that this is the second time that we get to connect because the last time we connected over lunch, we could have talked for hours.
I know. And I love that's the one thing I love about social media. I try to take like the good parts of it because we were introduced by, another mutual entrepreneur, female woman-owned San Diego business. And you reached out and I think it was like LinkedIn first
Mhm.
or yeah, you reached
Yeah.
out on LinkedIn and I get a lot of weird messages on LinkedIn.
Yes, this is
So
true.
I always make sure I cross reference, and I looked at your Instagram and your page and I'm like, oh, wow, she seems so
Oh,
interesting and I love her content. So
thank you.
I had so much fun meeting you in person and connecting with you.
We also did it over a delicious meal in North County, San Diego.
Oh my gosh, it was amazing. I think I went back after because
Oh,
yeah.
so great.
So Judy, tell our audience like a little bit about you. Like I remember, did you say, kind of like about your agency? Like, what is your focus and your mission in your marketing agency?
Yeah, so we're actually in the middle of a rebrand right now, and what I love to say is that we create storytelling and design that moves the heart. Each
Mhm,
of my team members who are here, we're super authentic, and
mhm,
who you see when we present, on Zoom or whatever is who you're going to see in real life. And so that's been really very refreshing to have that.
yeah,
My team thinks as logically as they do creatively, which I think is also a rare breed of people to be able to use both sides of the brain. We love
mhm,
working with women founders and with founders of
mhm,
color and positive impact brands. And when I say positive impact, I'm not just saying like you're out there saving the world, but
mhm,
if your heart and intention is to help people like you do with your
mhm,
brand and with creating,
mhm.
healthy sauces with one of our clients is a bakery line. And
Oh,
so,
awesome.
like who doesn't love freshly baked bread and just the
Oh my
intention
gosh.
and the heart of the people that we work with. We are very selective in that because we want to
Mhm,
create visionary visibility, especially for voices of color. So for me, as an Asian American woman, I've had to
mhm,
go through so many hurdles to be able to speak loudly and proudly. And even then, I don't even
mhm.
think I'm that loud. But to speak about what it is that we
I think I'm
do.
louder than you are. Everyone's like, "You're so loud." I'm like, "I'm sorry. I'm very
Yeah,
excited.
excited.
I'm
Yeah.
very excitable."
Exactly, and those features weren't necessarily what was, respected or valued in my family of origin, and so to
Uh,
be able to figure out who I was, and then because I have that kind of underdog, not being accepted and having to figure out my own way, and then paving my own path in a creative fashion that was unlike what my Asian tiger parents wanted with the doctor, lawyer, engineer. So all of this has been a wonderful opportunity for me to know exactly where my founders are when they need to speak up about their own businesses and their mission and their purpose, and to be able to tell those stories in a very respectful, um, honoring kind of way.
I love that. And so can you tell me a little bit about like so what was your upbringing? Like were you not allowed to express your feelings
Oh
or
yeah. I'm the
Mm,
eldest of four, so I was the
okay.
first child of immigrants that my immigrant parents who emigrated from Taiwan, but they were originally born in China and fled when they were very young. I didn't learn
Mhm,
about any of this until junior high, but they purposely chose to live in an area that was predominantly white people, and
mhm.
they wanted us to assimilate with white people, but at
Wow.
home you're supposed to speak Mandarin, defer to elders, not question anything. And so
Mhm.
growing up, I had to my nature isn't like that. My mom used to complain that I walk too loud, talk too loud, laugh too loud, like all the things.
Wow.
I was too loud, and just too much. But I realize now that it was ultimately just I was always the truth teller. And,
Mhm.
yes, I would put my foot in my mouth many times, but I also could see clearly like what all was happening, but everybody was trying to save face. And so
Right.
it was a really difficult place to be. And then also when I realized I'm not exceptional at math, science, all econ, business, like business, I've learned how to do
Mhm.
because I've done it in my own way and building my own business and from a
Mhm.
creative standpoint, but not the way that those, like the MBAs, when I went to Berkeley and all of those kinds of things, not that way. So I've been able
Right.
to create the life that I wanted, but it involved a lot of breaking through the quote unquote norms that my family expected.
The expectations, right?
Mhm.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, I feel like we have so much in common in that retrospect. That's probably why we just connected so
Yeah.
easily over lunch.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. I always tell everyone I was like the total rebel party Asian, like,
Mhm.
and it just, I just didn't operate the way that I think my parents expected, and
Yeah.
like but I ended up studying finance. And so in college, I kind of got my act together after high school, and went the banking route. I think I tried. And, I had a great job and I just was not happy. I mean, I
Mm.
was so bored.
Mm.
But, I tell people there's always like a path, right? It's like, it's like, even though I wasn't happy with it, and I'm glad I made a change, because not a lot of people have the courage to change, to pivot from the choice that
Mhm.
they made. Um, but that experience helped me a lot in all the other paths that I went down. So I
Yeah.
don't think there's anything as wasted time. So after college, before you started your own company, what did you do before that?
Yeah, so I was running away from myself as much as I possibly could. And I ended up running all the way to the other side of the world. So I actually I counted at one point in time, I think I've lived in 6 different countries, 20 something cities,
Wow.
40 different like actual like moving residences. And all along
Mhm.
people were like, were you in the military? Like, what is going on? And I
Wow.
was like, no, I was just running away from myself. And so because of that, my career has been very diverse. And I like to always
Mhm.
say that, like, if you've ever seen words on anything, packaging, a direct mail piece, anything online, I've definitely touched that medium of, content
Wow.
creation. So I was a travel writer at some point in time. I,
Wow.
yeah, I've always been very grateful and lucky. The universe has watched out for me. So even though things didn't
Mhm.
unfold the way that I thought that they would, I've been able to
Mhm.
be like an editor in chief. Internationally, I've been able to be asked for all of these remarkable experiences to be around spiritual luminaries or iconoclasts,
Wow.
or if I could have tallied how many people I've interviewed, it's definitely the Malcolm Gladwell's like 10,000 hours or more.
Wow.
And yeah, and so because of that, it's enabled me to really hone in and hear someone's story. I also became a yoga teacher and a Reiki master. And what I loved about all of that is I had always had this very intuitive part about me, but that wasn't
Mhm.
encouraged growing up. And
Of
so
course.
becoming a yoga teacher enabled me to return to that sense of home within myself. And then that
Mhm.
is what I've brought into my work and my business, where a lot of people, and I say this a lot to clients, like, it's totally normal if you cry. It's a very normal experience with me, because I think people just
Oh.
feel so safe and so seen and so heard. And then when I interview people, I'm hearing what they're telling me with their words, but what I
Mhm.
actually hear even more is the subtext underneath and the story that they really want to be telling. So I feel like that's what I end up responding to is the deeper level, and then that's when they feel so seen and heard. And I've had people, people who've been profiled in the New York Times and all of these different
Mhm.
really remarkable publications, and they'll say like your article or the way that you wrote about you know my story or my business or whatnot
Mhm.
is it brought me to tears. It's the most powerful way that I've ever seen anybody express it. How did you know what I wanted to say, but I didn't know exactly like what words to express? um yeah, and
Wow.
I think it's always like seeing the other person, mostly because I think I felt so unseen for so long. And so all of
Mhm.
this is a quest to create that sense of, I see you, I hear you, I honor you. We might have different lived experiences or different truths, but that doesn't make one
Mhm.
better than the other. It just means that we're all contributing to this collective growth of the world.
That's amazing, and I think that I think that, uh, eh, being like, wanting to be seen and heard and understood is, like, the basic human fundamental, and it's something that's never really taught, um, to many people, like, of all
Mhm.
cultures growing up,
Yeah.
and I think that, and, it's all related, right? Like, if we're secure and we feel seen and heard, especially, like, growing up as a child, like, y you have the ability to kind of grow and go after and, your career, and in your career, you're able to express and listen to, I think for a lot I think it sounds like for you and for myself, it was a learned skill later in life.
Mhm.
And otherwise, we have these stories that we run in our head from our own experiences, and I've been guilty of that. Of I would say, like, I thought I was open minded enough,
Mm.
or I thought I was listening, but I learning how to really listen to someone
Mm.
is such a huge skill. And like you said, it's like not just the words, but everything, and then really hearing them is such a impactful skill that affects all parts of your life in
Absolutely.
business and personal, your in all your relationships, business
Mhm.
relationships, with the kids, your family, everybody. So
Yeah.
I think that, you know i I think that's amazing, and that's definitely a journey I had to go through these last, 5 years as well when I went through a divorce. Um, and I think it's a work in progress. It's something you have to always
Mhm.
work on,
Mhm.
you know.
I always say that, life is an upward moving spiral. So even if your experiences feel the same, they're not quite the same. They might be similar. And
Mhm.
there's always a lesson that you can take as you continue to refine and evolve and move, upward.
Mhm.
And you'll continue to be presented with those learning lessons. But I definitely
Mhm.
think as a business owner, as a parent, that ability to really hold space and see someone and hear them and
Mhm.
just the smallest nuance has
Mhm.
meant the biggest difference. Like everything from impacting my bottom line to
Mhm.
creating working relationships where I just had a client a couple weeks ago reach out to me who hadn't we haven't talked in 7 years, and they're like, we remember
Wow.
everything that you said before, we want to work with you again. The longest span of that was probably like 20 something years. Someone reached out to me this last
Wow.
year, yeah. And so I told my daughter today when she was walking to school is the story's never over. So like you're here having this moment that can feel challenging, or she's going through she like just interpersonal things, as she's navigating
Yeah.
elementary school. And so she's nervous about this one particular incident. And yet I'm like, this is one of an
Mhm.
unfolding series of life lessons in this space. And you never know how it's going to end up. And if we have that sense of curiosity and openness and approaching different people in that way, it really
Mhm.
lends to so many opportunities beyond what you thought you would, be open to. And that's like the
Right.
magic of life, like those adventures there.
Yeah, and my favorite word is curiosity. I
Mhm.
mean, I dream of having, like, a whole TED Talk about
Yeah.
curiosity because it's so underrated, and it's
Mhm.
something I still have to remind myself, like, instead of being defensive, or because I think sometimes the first, especially, like, I didn't grow up with parents talking to me, like, I just
Mhm.
watched, like, Full House, and I was
Oh
like,
my
"Do people
gosh.
talk to their kids like that?" Like,
And growing pains, I was like, "I wanna be that family."
real. Um, but it's just instead of being defensive, I have to, and this is in business relationships too. Like we have, instead of being defensive or think that someone's out to hurt you, or just being more curious, like, and asking more questions. Uh, and I think just my curiosity in different parts of different industries kind of led me to where I am. And I never thought I would be starting all over with a brand new business in the, I think, the hardest industry in the world, in my 40s.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look back, it's like, Steve Jobs' commencement speech is one of my favorite. Like, you can only connect
Mm-hmm.
a dot looking backwards. You can't
Mm-hmm.
look forward. And then only looking backwards, I was like, oh my gosh, like I just did that because I enjoyed it. Or, I just knew wherever I was, I wasn't happy or I didn't like it. So I looked for new things. I was curious about different things, and
Yeah.
all of it led me to where I am today.
I think the asking questions component of things isn't just asking questions outward, it's also asking questions inward. So, like, if
Hmm.
something feels misaligned, that's information for you. And
Hmm.
I was not raised to ask questions for sure. I was not raised to like challenge
Hmm.
authority, which was really difficult
Yeah.
because at school they're like, raise your hand, ask questions. And at home, it's like, you better not ask any questions. You better not question like what I'm telling you to do.
Right.
So it wasn't until I got to college that I went to a professor's office hours because I knew I had to boost my grade. And I'm like, well, if I
Hmm.
go to office hours, they're going to know that I'm making an effort. And this professor said to me, why aren't you asking these questions in class? These are really good questions. And they not just only help you, but they also potentially help
Yeah.
someone else. And that was my
Right.
first awareness of, oh, I have permission to ask questions, that my
Hmm.
questions can not only help myself, but it could help somebody else. So I could give voice to somebody else. And I had
Right.
no idea that that would turn into a whole career. Where at the time,
Right.
when I was at Berkeley, the School of Journalism is an esteemed program. And it looked like the
Yes.
people to me looked so much older that I was like,
Mhm.
there's no way I'm going to apply for that. There's no way I could, get out there and like write the articles and
Mhm.
do all that stuff. But then that became my profession and I loved it. And I love hearing people's stories. Like storytelling to me is not only an ancient art form that our brains are all wired
Mhm.
to receive. I always tell
Yeah.
in business and marketing, like facts tell and stories sell. So if you can
Yeah.
sell and know your stories, that's huge. But being
Right.
able to ask those questions of yourself, when I became a yoga teacher, one of the things that I loved was learning in Chinese medicine because, the yoga is
Mhm.
it's like a sister science to acupuncture and
Mhm.
homeopathy and Ayurvedic medicine. So I had an
Mhm.
opportunity to be around all these experts. And they were saying there was this one educator named Lonnie Jarrett who wrote this book about acupuncture. And I had no idea it was such a spiritual science, but he said, look, when you are conceived, the first thing
Mhm.
that happens is that your heart develops. Your brain is actually
Mhm.
the last thing to fully develop. And yet, the second that you're born, your brain kicks on, and then that becomes the thing that powers everything else. So, for all of our lives,
Wow.
we're trying
Mhm.
to remind ourselves that the brain is the servant to the heart, not the other way around. And that was a
Mm.
huge awareness. And he also said in Chinese medicine, you treat the whole person as a universe
Mhm.
unto themselves. And so the same way that you see the planet and all of the ecosystems and everything has to be in harmony and in balance, that's what you're trying to figure out. So that
Mhm.
when you are born, you're also born with a destiny, but you also
Mhm.
have free will. So you're not forced to fulfill your destiny because you can choose
Yeah.
not to do it. And he's like, however, what will happen is that it will first start knocking as internal symptomology and you'll start to get
Mhm.
sick, stressed, like, you'll feel like
Yes.
badly. And then that's where people come to see acupuncture. Then, if you still don't heed the reminders of what your destiny is, it will start to present as external
Wow.
life events. And then that's when like life starts to knock and be like, hello, do you remember this is what you were set here to do? And I have
Wow.
always remembered that the head is the servant to the heart and the heart is actually the master, and that it will present, you will be notified if you are not living your destiny, and you'll either be notified by physical or psychosomatic, like, ailments, or then you'll be
Oh
notified by
my gosh.
life.
Judy, I like that is like really resonate. It's like, oh my gosh, I know I'm not like an emotional person probably because I don't allow
Mhm.
myself to be as much, but I have like goosebumps right
Mhm.
now
Mhm.
because I did go through that and
Mm.
I have to say, it, like I've always kind of like been a fun person, but I think because I was so ambitious because I wasn't like considered like the smart one in the family
Mm.
and that kind of thing and but I was determined to be successful at a
Mm.
very young age. So I worked so hard and I became very like I wanted to be like in college after college I want to be the corporate person. I wanted to climb the ladder. I was a VP by the time I was 25 years
Mm.
old for, for Bank of America. And I really relied on those accolades to validate who I am and to be like, that's succeeding, like that's
Mhm.
success. And
Mhm.
I just always was on the run, 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 had kids, never took a break. Um, just I had no idea I was such like I had this control issue, but I didn't realize that. And I was just so ambitious that I made it all up like I felt like that was my worth. Like if I was not successful, I'm worthless, right? And you can only do that for so long. It was It was like, it was kind of like how Wynn's Kitchen got started because it was like my mid-30s. I was exercising a lot, tennis, all that good stuff, and I was having anxiety attacks, but I didn't know that I was having an anxiety attack. I had high blood pressure. On the outside, I looked healthy, but I was just like, "My goodness, like, I just don't feel right," you know? And I went to an ear, throat, nose specialist because it literally felt like someone had their hands on my throat all the time, and it was just so uncomfortable, and it was only, the journey of not only, my discovery of, like, the impact of food on your health, but during that time, it's, like, really being more open I mean, I went to acupuncture, I did, I kinda made myself slow down a lot more, and it's just crazy. You cannot hide from your body, I guess is what I'm trying to I thought it was like,
Yeah.
I have a perfect life, I have my dream life, right? That my dream home. I have a beautiful family. I
Mm.
play tennis. I never played sports growing up. I just thought in my mind and on the books, I created my perfect life that I've
Mm.
always dreamt of and wanted. But inside, I was so unhappy and stressed and burnt out, and it's crazy how you cannot hide from your body,
Yeah.
and, you know
Oh, it's wild. Yes, for sure. I've gone through the same thing. Like when I went through my divorce, I used to not want people to hug me because I was so frail that if they hugged me too tight, it would throw out my neck and my shoulders. And
Really?
yeah, and
Oh
then
my
my knees
gosh.
would keep buckling like when I tried to like stand up. And so
Wow.
it was definitely the it was such a physical manifestation of the
Mhm,
experience that again outside like and I have to say too, thank you for sharing that on the surface your life looked a certain way that people would have perceived, and I just really want people to understand that what we present out there in the world is often not exactly what's happening. And when I was doing my yoga training,
absolutely.
yes, I had remembered that they had said if we took all of our problems that we actually go through on a private basis and we threw that
Mhm,
all on a table in like a shared room with everybody else, once everybody else saw all of the problems that everybody was going through, we would gladly take our own problems back and just be like, nope, I'm good. I'm just going to deal with this one. Thank you.
mhm,
And
mhm.
so that was a very helpful reminder because I'm still always surprised when I started sharing about my divorce and like the things that I had gone through, that all of these people who I looked up to, who I thought had
Mhm.
also perfect families, were like, oh my God, no, here's what's happening behind the scenes. And it's like, what?
Right,
So
right.
to give yourself
It,
compassion and grace for anybody who's listening to this, thinking that anybody has it all together.
no one
Challenge
does.
that.
And going back to what you said earlier about how like your brand is, like you really value authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that's a big part of my journey because before, when I was in wedding planning, I mean,
Mm.
I had my own wedding planning business for 12 years. It was all about perfection. Everything was perfect. I sold them on the story that your wedding is going to be perfect. It's your dream day. The pictures are perfect. I mean, every fork and knife had to be spot on. And it was this after so many years of that, I think it was a lot of things I had to unpack after letting go of that business. It really it was really difficult for me. I mean, there were so many things about I loved, and I met so
Mm.
many amazing clients and vendors, and a lot of people I still keep in touch with, which
Mm.
is so fun. But I think for my own personal, it was the concept of that perfection was really damaging,
Yeah.
and especially Instagram. Every picture had to be perfect, you know, and it's so much pressure on the couple too that it takes away from what the whole wedding is really about sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I
I
think
mean, yeah.
for Wynn's Kitchen now, like I literally tell people, like, 'cause sometimes people think I'm like super big, and I'm like, oh no, I still have sauce in my trunk if you want to buy it. So I try to keep it authentic and kind of share some of the challenges that I have, and all the things that I balance in a day. It's it's not always perfect all the time. And
Yeah.
some days, like, there are weeks where I don't want to show my face on Instagram, or I don't want to cook, and
Yeah.
I work on other things.
Yeah.
But forcing yourself to go online for the sake of just, like the algorithm or
Mhm.
whatever, it's it takes away the joy of
Oh,
the
yeah.
business, and it takes away from you, you know. So I'm like, yeah, my Instagram does is not curated and all it's not all matching colors and themes, and but I really try to stay authentic. And and then the nice thing is I feel like the trend is going more towards that. People want to relate and know that Wynn doesn't look perfect at 6 a.m. having coffee on her white bed and not spilling.
Oh, I love that so much. I always say, in my podcast that life may not always be pretty, but it is indeed beautiful, and you can make your story beautiful, because the
Right,
essence of storytelling, of any story that we love, like nobody loves a movie where everything's hunky dory the whole time. Like, we want
right,
the stories with the adventure and the challenges, and the hero or the heroine who has to go through personal growth in order to get to that
right,
outcome. It's why
right,
Joseph Campbell's like hero's journey is so resonant with so many people, because we all go through that. We all go through
right.
that, like living and dying and the birth and rebirth of all of who we are. And so I just started working with a personal trainer, and he was saying that he did the landmark forum, and at the end of the program, the lesson that was distilled is basically be authentic. And if you're not going to be authentic and being inauthentic. Like, if you can't make it and you can't do it, like if you're just having a bad day, or like
Mhm.
whatever, you're just like, you know what, this is my max and that's all I can do, like, fine, then just
Right.
be honest that that's where you are, instead of
Yeah.
creating all these like falsehoods that don't actually exist. Like, the thing that boggles my mind is always with because I'm in marketing. So like, when I see airbrushed images of the people who everybody else looks up to, even
Yeah,
that person doesn't look like that. So like, what are we aspiring to do and
I
be?
know. I
Yeah.
have to confess though, I love the filters because,
Oh,
like,
the
during
filters,
the
they're super fun. Oh yeah. Yes, the supers are super fun. Yeah. But I
I'm
think
like,
in
I'm
my mind, I was like,
really things.
I wouldn't want to like meet someone and have them be like, huh. I was like, I would just rather than be more like pleasantly surprised, seeing like, one of my fears is like I'll be on a Zoom and then it'll freeze in this like horrific facial expression. And I was like, yeah, but if Matthew McConaughey, during peak COVID when he was doing Zoom calls, looked like an old grandfather in that photo that was like going around, I was like, dude, if Matthew McConaughey looks like that, then
Right.
what the heck am I trying to do? Like, it's fine. And I try to remind my daughter too, like you have biracial children. My daughter's
Yeah.
biracial, and we lived in Asia for a while, and that physical,
Yeah.
the focus on the physical was so intense. And so it was one of
Right.
the reasons I did not want to stay in Asia. Um,
Yeah.
but I tell her all the time, I'm like, it's great to feel confident in your skin and who you're in, and
Mhm.
understand you will continue to grow, you will age, you will evolve. And
Mhm.
so what really matters is like what's on the inside, because what's on the
Right.
outside will continue to change, which I think is just so hard as a culture that's obsessed with youth and
Yes. Yes.
just all there's
Skin,
like no,
hair,
yeah,
perfection,
perfection. There's
all
just, it's
perfection.
exhausting.
It is. It is. I know. I do remember I was, at an Asian market when my oldest was younger, and her hair was really light, when she
Mm.
was young, and there were people who wanted to touch my
Oh
daughter's
my
hair.
gosh.
I'm like, "No, I'm sorry. Please do not touch my daughter,"
Yeah,
it's so bizarre, but
it's so bizarre.
I wanna circle back, Judy, a little bit. Like, I love the storytelling. I mean, I do. I love storytelling, and I'm an avid reader. I love biographies and learning about people's journeys and stuff, and it's funny. I used to get, like, I think it's Domino magazine, and I would read about all these entrepreneurs who, like, started, their cookie business out of her kitchen, and I just loved those stories, and I never thought that I would end up, that would happen to me, which is really fun. But so how do you, at what capacity do you work with brands, or how do you, do you help them, like, develop, like their strategy, or do you write articles for them, or
Yeah,
how does that work?
that's a great question. So, we work with kind of two different buckets of people. So we work with um, businesses and entrepreneurs who created a lot of success, and they've done it organically and haven't necessarily needed to do marketing, but they're realizing they want to scale to sell, or they want to get to the next
Mhm.
level, and then from there they
Mhm.
need to do like a whole branding, dynamic. They need to come up with
Uh-huh.
the look and feel, the visual identity, the tone of voice, the storytelling, and then all of the ongoing content marketing that goes with that, and the strategy that goes with
Mhm.
that to increase exposure and visibility for the business. So those are usually the bigger businesses that we work with. The other
Mhm.
brands that we work with are usually founders and
Mhm.
solopreneurs. And so we really love to champion, different people's dreams and what they're creating. And so
Mhm.
oftentimes what happens, especially with women founders, is like you're just not believing in how awesome you are and how awesome you
Mhm.
already are. And so let us
Mhm.
help you reframe your own mindset around that, and then
Mhm.
figure out how to tell that story out into the world. So one of my clients, she's a very successful keynote speaker. And when I started
Uh-huh.
working with her, she was realizing like she needed to up level her business, and she needed to just she was already working with like, a social media strategist and all that, but she just needed like a bigger kind of expert behind what she was doing. And through our
Mhm.
conversations, when I met her in person, we were in New York together, and she was just like, you have no idea how much you changed the way that I approach my business. Because the way that we work
Wow.
together and you help me see myself differently, I pitch
Mhm.
myself completely differently with businesses now. So like she feels
Wow.
way more confident to ask for even more money. She feels much more confident about like the impact that she's making and how to
Mhm.
articulate the difference that she's making. So that's what I love to see. Like I love being able to give you the words that you need, and then help you build that confidence to express that. And so we work from that
Mhm.
strategic perspective and a lot of
Mhm.
kind of the mindset perspective. And then we also
Mhm.
work with actual like execution of like, the visual look and feel, or the actual content across all channels.
Wow, that's amazing. And I agree with you. It's this. just like you said, the word you give the founders the words. I mean, my
Mhm.
story has evolved so much in the
Yeah.
last 3 years because, like, I know what I'm doing as far as, like, what I did, and but
Yeah.
just, like, articulating that is such a skill, and then, saying it in a way that resonates with
Mhm.
people
Yeah, and
is so
resonates with you
huge.
too, so that you
It
feel
resonates
like
with
when you're
me. It's like
speaking, yeah, it's natural, it doesn't feel like
yeah.
forced, you're not gonna have to sit there and think about it, but it's like, "No, this is how it is, like, this is authentically how I show up." So, yeah.
I think that's really important because I did work with a marketing agency, when I first started, and I was just laughing, like, because when they were kind of saying, like, kind of like the little bio about,
Mhm.
the founder, and one of the options was, like, Wynn Austin, the evangelical, and I was like, "Okay." I'm like,
Wow.
sorry, that's I don't really
Yeah.
resonate with that word."
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
I'm
Yeah.
like, "Yeah." They're from Texas, so maybe it was
Ah.
like and then and some of the words I'm like, "Wait, I kinda sound like I have a Southern accent." Like, when I
Well, yeah, and I think that that's like the art is to understand the voice of the company, but also to
Mhm.
understand your consumers and the language that they're
Uh-huh.
speaking. Because I think as business owners and a lot of us, like we get lost in the fact of like we're in our own heads and you've got to
Mhm.
meet your consumer where they are. And so a
Yeah.
lot of when I work with clients, it's like, hey, from a consumer psychology standpoint, this is where your audience is. And like, these are the things that
Mhm.
we need to be expressing to build that
Mhm.
connection and that relationship. And I understand you
Yeah.
have all of this other stuff and you bring them along for the journey. So I think that
Right.
that's really important.
That's amazing. And so, okay, so on your profile, you listed one of your things as an author. I know you've written tons of articles, which I really want you to send me a couple. I love
Oh,
to read, so I really would love
oh,
for you to send me some of like your favorite interviews
yeah.
or
Oh,
articles.
yeah.
Yeah, I've just yeah, I love reading. Just I love bios and reading, and so I'd love to see some of those. But are you like, have you written a book? Are you writing a book?
Yeah,
Tell me.
so I wrote a book, I think it was like a year or two ago, called The Little Book of Tibetan Rites and Rituals. So it was this independent publishing
Oh,
house that reached out to me. Yeah, and it's distributed by
awesome!
Simon and Schuster, which is really cool. We wrote a
Yeah.
kids book when I was living in Hawaii called Corinne Wants to Grow Up, and that was like a Kickstarter like top pick. But the thing that I'm working
Wow.
on now is How to Disappoint Your Parents in 10 Shameless Steps. Um,
Oh, wow.
it was going to be a modern Asian American guide, but when I've shared it with people, they're
Yes.
like, no, this isn't just for Asian. This is for everybody. So that's the thing that I'm working on now. I actually have a call on Thursday to like dive into the outline a bit more and like do all of that. And so
Uh-huh.
I'm excited about that because my whole thing is mental and emotional health for voices of color because it can be
Yes.
taboo in so many different respects. And I feel like the bolder and braver you are, then the stronger that you believe in like that internal growth and that internal development. My whole thing
Right.
hurt people, and I anything that I can
Yes.
stop that from happening more,
Mhm.
I hope to help in that way. And so that's like a project that's been really calling to me to focus on for this year, and I'm excited to get more of that out there. I'm actually talking with a podcast producer as well to kind of create this special 10-part series about the book and like sample chapters
How
and all this kind of stuff.
exciting.
Yeah,
I love it. I love it.
it's awesome.
Oh
And
my
I would
gosh.
say if you love books for NHPI Heritage Month, I've been reading David Chang's Eat Like a Peach. So he created Momofuku. And
Yeah.
I have to say his writing, it's such a distinct voice and his writing is good and his insights are great. And I just got to the early part of the chapters where he's realizing that he has like had severe mental health challenges being bipolar, but didn't
Wow.
realize that he was bipolar.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I had no idea about any of this. And so it's been I'm really enjoying the book. It's called Eat Like a Peach, Eat a Peach, maybe by David
Okay.
Chang.
No,
Yeah.
I'll have to look that up. I know I have
Hmm.
such a long list. I feel like I need to, like, hide for, like, a weekend and, like, just that's, like, my dream, just, like, hide somewhere in a little
Hibernate.
corner and just read and, you
Yeah,
know
yeah. I love it.
So that's so cool. I'll have to check that out. And then,
Yeah.
well, I'm glad David Chang kind of
Yes.
cleared up his little issue.
Yes.
He was in the
Yeah.
news a lot this year with the
Yes.
whole chili crunch
Oh, yeah, I
trademarks.
know, the chili crunch trademark. I was gonna
Yeah.
that's a whole other thing that we can talk about, but, yeah.
Oh my gosh. So, and then I know you have your own so I can't wait to get your new book.
Hmm.
I'm actually writing a book too. I'm doing a cookbook. So
Hmm.
it's going to be a healthy twist on traditional
That's
flavors, traditional
awesome.
cuisines.
I love it.
Um, I probably need to find someone to hold me accountable on that. I get pulled in
We
so
can
many
be book
different.
buddies.
Yes, I need a book buddy.
Yeah.
I need a book buddy. But no, it's so much fun. And so tell me a little bit. So you have your own podcast. It was
Mhm.
so funny. Earlier we were like, are you on my podcast? Am I on your podcast? Tell me a little bit about like what your podcast is about.
Yeah, so originally I started it a few years ago. We're in like the hundredth, like 20 something episodes now. And it's about empowering mental and emotional health for Asian Americans by breaking through taboo topics. So we've interviewed an array of people, everyone who's talking about everything from like psychedelics to sex and
Wow.
relationships to
Mhm.
politics and all of the things. And I just wanted people to be able to have an opportunity if you don't have the chance to go see a therapist or and
Mhm.
by no means is this a replacement for any of that, but at least you
No,
can feel seen and heard and know that you're not
right.
alone in anything that you're going through.
That's awesome. And what's so funny is before I separated from my ex in 2019, I had never ever listened to a podcast. Like
Oh,
I didn't know
really?
how to listen to a podcast. Like I had no
Really?
idea. And I don't know what I was doing. I think I was just probably like packing jars in the garage or something. And I can't read while I'm doing that. And I was like, oh, I think it was a book that I read. I'll have to reconnect with you on the book. I loved the book and I think you'll love it too. And I'm pretty sure you've read it. But I heard that she had a podcast. So I was like, okay, what's that? So I, did on my iPad, Googled how podcasts and the little icon popped up and I was like, oh wow. So this is how you listen to a
That's
podcast.
awesome. That's awesome.
And I started listening to like um just a lot of like relationship stuff and trauma stuff, like, mental health things. And while I was just working on other things, and it that probably that whole year the first year I listened to more podcasts than watched TV
Oh,
because
wow.
I was just so my brain was just so like I was just in shock. Like so I just
Wow.
couldn't focus to even read a book and I couldn't focus enough to watch a movie.
Mm,
It was such a weird
mm.
it's such a weird thing, but listening and having it while I was, like, working on other things
Yeah.
really helped me out, and there were episodes or words, it's not a replacement for a therapist, but there are trigger things that you're like, "Oh my
Mhm.
gosh, I
Mhm.
never thought about that," or "I
Yep.
never knew I felt that way until someone
Yep.
else said it, and then it
Yeah.
totally clicked." And so then
Mhm.
you can take that and go to a therapist and have a better way of explaining it
Mhm.
instead of being
Mhm.
like, "I don't know, I just don't feel well," or, it's like it really cuts down the time
Mhm.
getting to the root
Mhm.
of kind of like what we're going through and healing that trauma or just really getting to know yourself,
Yeah.
which I tell everyone that's separated or
Yeah.
going through divorce. I said, the biggest thing is you got to work on yourself
Yeah, for
first.
sure.
That's my biggest advice. So
Mm, love it.
cool. Well, I can't wait. I'm driving to LA Friday, so I'll pull up your
Oh,
podcast and
thanks.
listen to that on the drive.
Thank you.
Oh,
Well, this was
cool.
so much fun. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for being on our show, Judy. Is there
Yeah.
any last minute things you want to share with our audience?
I would just say to keep going. It seems to be the message that I've needed to hear, and just to keep recommitting
Mhm.
to your dreams and like keep going. I feel like as a business owner, especially, we got to keep going.
Yes, and finding people that you like that you can reach out to, like, 'cause
Mhm.
it's a roller coaster, right? It's ups
Mhm.
and downs and ons. There are some days I'm like, "Oh, I'm such a failure."
Mhm. Mhm.
It's like
Oh yeah.
you just go through this emotional roller coaster, and just
Yeah.
having people that you can ping to
Yeah.
kinda remind you, like, "Okay, it's
Oh
just a
yeah.
moment, a day,
Mhm.
you can overcome this." I think that's so important to find, friends that are supportive.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
yeah. Well, thank you so much, Judy.
Thank you.
I love chatting with you. I feel like I can chat with you forever. Thanks for being on this show, and I'm sure we'll catch up soon.
Yeah, awesome.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Bye.